Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 55 of the Fair Housing Insiders, and I'm your host, Jonathan Sarr. And joining me today is Kathy Williams, and we are looking forward to talking about competing accommodation requests. Very interesting topic. We're going to look at some examples and then how to deal with those. So just a couple of housekeeping items. Remember to keep your questions coming in. We love your community questions, and we tabulate them and have every quarter a special episode just to answer those community questions. And you could win, have a chance to win an Amazon gift card. So keep those questions coming in. Sign up for our newsletter so that you don't miss out on anything from the Fair Housing Institute. So our fair housing focus for today, Kathy, is competing accommodation requests. So can you start us off by what is an accommodation request?
Sure. As most of us know, when a resident or applicant has a disability, they have the opportunity to ask for an accommodation, which is an exception to the usual rule that you have or the policy that you usually follow. If the disability of that resident causes a problem for them, and that if you make an exception, they'll be more easily, more comfortably able to live in your apartment community. So that's what a reasonable accommodation is. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about competing accommodations, the reality is that you could have several residents, let's say on the same floor of an apartment building, all with disabilities. And once in a while, those disabilities might compete for whose accommodation gets granted, whose gets ignored, or who has to give up their accommodation request so that someone else's accommodation request can get granted. That's the issue that occasionally comes up when we're talking about dealing with reasonable accommodation requests.
Got it. That's excellent. Thank you so much. So just so our audience can make sure they can get a nice visual, can you give us an example of two accommodation requests that could compete with each other?
Maybe the most common are requests involving assistance animals. Mm-hmm. So I live in one apartment and I ask for permission to keep my cat, who provides me emotional support. So I ask for that. And maybe next door, my neighbor has severe allergies to cats that cause a serious reaction, hives and breathing problems and all of that. So in that case, if my neighbor finds out that I am asking for permission to have a cat, the neighbor is going to say, absolutely no, that cat dander is going to get in the heating system and the air conditioning system. It's going to find its way into my apartment and it's going to make me sick. Right. I remember having a issue with one of my clients who had given permission for a resident to have an emotional support cat. And don't you know that one day she opens up her door about the time her neighbor did, who had a severe allergy. And of course, the cat ran right into her neighbor's apartment. So the neighbor ran out of her apartment because she wasn't about to try to catch that cat. So that's the kind of issue that can come up. And so it makes you think, if I grant an accommodation to one person, then I can't grant it to another.
Wow. Yeah, that's an amazing scenario. Appreciate that example. So let's take it to another level with the different sectors that we have in our industry. So do you find that there are certain sectors where this particular scenario is more common?
You know, in my experience, I've seen it happen in all sectors. I've seen it happen in senior properties. I've seen it happen in family properties. So I think this is something that is maybe shared in all types of housing sectors as an issue that management may have to address when granting reasonable accommodation requests.
Got it. Got it. So everybody listening, you're not exempt. So we need to pay attention to this show for sure. Okay. So how should you handle competing requests? What would be your thoughts on that, Kathy?
Okay, this is not an easy, problem to solve, and I'm not going to pretend that it is. What I want you to be aware of is management is never in the position of deciding one person's disability is more worthy than another person's.
Right.
So you never want to let yourself get into that position. You need to follow your process. For instance, if we're talking about the neighbors and the request for the ESA and the issue with the allergies, you have both neighbors go through the process of explaining what they want as a reasonable accommodation and then explaining the reason and verifying it. For instance, what I find is that housing providers will definitely verify the need for an emotional support animal, but when the neighbor says they're allergic, they won't even verify that. They just accept that. And I think it's important to get your facts straight. Is it that they're allergic to all animals or just cats or just dogs? And how do they know? And how do they react? Having sneezing, kind of a reaction might be much different than someone who has a life-threatening reaction. So you have to begin with getting all the facts and getting them verified by a medical professional who can speak to whatever the need, whatever the disability-related need is. And then when you get the facts, then you meet with both residents separately to discuss the situation and how it can be best resolved to everyone's satisfaction. That might involve transfers, offers of transfers. Now, they don't have to transfer, obviously, but you can certainly make that offer. And then if they turn it down, that's fine too. And also coming up with a way that, for instance, both people are not on the elevator at the same time, and that they take and make an effort to stay separate from each other, especially if the animal is with the resident at the time in the hallway, on the stairway, wherever. So it's one of those things you just have to work out through negotiation, through discussion with each of the involved residents.
Very good. Thank you so much. All right. So what is the takeaway that you would want everyone to remember coming out of this nice summary you've given us and some example? Like what do we walk away with from this show today?
Okay, a couple of things. One is, do not put yourself in the position of thinking one disability is more worthy of a reasonable accommodation than another. Yeah. All disabilities should be viewed equal when it comes to what management does to provide a disability-related benefit. So that's one thing. And the other thing is to work very hard to get both residents to realize they need to cooperate with the process so that both residents can have their reasonable accommodation requests be granted, and to avoid what could turn into a situation of disability harassment. If the resident who feels like their rights are being somehow interfered with by this other resident because of their disability, it easily can get into a situation of resentment, of hostility, and that can turn into disability harassment, which is an illegal act in and of itself that then management has to deal with. So you want to avoid that by trying to get everyone to respect and appreciate each other's needs and then work cooperatively to find the best resolution to how everyone can live together in that building.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much. Excellent takeaway. And I know our community really appreciates that, Kathy. Thank you so much. Okay, well, we come to the end of another amazing Fair Housing Insiders episode. So, as we announced in our last episode, we have adjusted the Fair Housing 5 to give you now our wonderful guest 90 seconds. What do you think about that, Kathy?
I think I'm going to be able to handle it this time. In the past, I haven't been able to handle the 60 minutes, but 60 seconds. I think I can do 90. I think
90 seconds. Okay. All right. Well, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. All right. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Should accommodation requests by residents with physical disabilities be given priority over requests by residents with mental disabilities?
Absolutely not. All disabilities should be viewed on an equal plane.
Should accommodation requests by residents with more serious disabilities be given priority over residents with less serious disabilities?
Again, while that is very tempting, if you have a resident that uses a wheelchair versus a resident who doesn't show any kind of need for an assistive device, it's easy to think the person who needs the wheelchair, his or her rights should be upheld more than someone with a less obvious disability. And again, don't ever put yourself in the position of judging one disability more worthy than another.
Very good. All right. If a resident makes it known that they are allergic to animals, should both pets and assistance animals be prohibited from living in the apartments close to the resident with allergies?
And the answer to that is you probably could say no to a pet in the next door unit to someone who has an allergy. You can never say no to an assistance animal, though, as long as they follow your procedure and show that they need one. So in the case of one resident with a disability who has an allergy, you cannot say no to an assistance animal in the next apartment.
Should a property manager attempt to get residents together to resolve a problem with a resident's request for an assistance animal?
I think it should be dealt with separately by management with each resident very carefully. And if after you do that, you think it might be helpful to bring them together, then yes, that's fine. But I would never start out in that posture by having them together.
Should a housing provider excuse a resident with allergies who harasses another resident with an assistance animal?
And the answer to that is no. There is no way to excuse disability-related harassment, and therefore even the person has allergies are going to be held liable if they violate the law by committing disability harassment.
Okay, thank you, Kathy.
Did I make it?
No.
Oh, even 90 seconds and I still didn't make it.
Do you want to know what the time was, or do you want me to just hold that?
No, go ahead. Let me.
Okay. Yeah, 2 minutes and 45 seconds.
Oh my gosh.
So close.
Oh my gosh. I'm never going to win that gazillion dollars. Darn it.
But again, I love the questions. I love the specific items because it really helps our audience. So thank you for your response to those questions and the way that you did it, because these are really, really important. It's a very important topic too. So we always appreciate having you on the show. So thank you for your time today. All right, everyone. that concludes episode 55 of the Fair Housing Insider. So if you love this episode, please give us a thumbs up on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to our show, share it with your network, use it for training purposes. We appreciate you. You are awesome. Thank you for tuning in today. We'll see you next time on our next episode. Take care, everyone.
Bye.